and I'm welcoming Alan Tiller here. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
I'm not bad. I'm not too bad. You're a historian.
Yes.
And you base a lot of your historic stuff on paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And you've written quite a few books.
Yes.
And they are?
So the first one was called The Haunts of Adelaide, and that originally came out in 2014. And there were a number of issues with that book to do with the publisher. And it took me around 6 years to rewrite the whole book, and I re-released it last year as The Haunts of Adelaide Revised Edition.
Oh, wow.
So the original book was about 120 pages. The new one's about 250 or so.
Oh, excellent.
So I added tons of new stuff. So, for instance, there was a story about the Squatters' Arms at Theberton. And between writing the first book and the second book, my team, Eidolon Paranormal, had gone back and reinvestigated.
Oh.
So you actually get 2 or 3 investigations worth of stuff, not just one. So everything was updated like that.
Oh, wow, that's excellent.
So it's a lot bigger, a lot better. The following book was Haunted Adelaide, and that book was based on research from a project I did with the city libraries back in 2016 called Haunted Buildings in Adelaide, which was a world first. So the idea was that over about 4 months, I welcomed members of the public into the library and they could come and tell me their stories.
Yes.
And then I went and researched them.
Oh.
And so the book has more stories than what we actually researched. Ended up being 79 stories in there.
Oh, good.
And there's probably about another 10 that didn't make the book because they are currently being investigated by police. So they're to do with murders and things like that.
Okay.
So I didn't want to include them because they're still current.
They're current.
And families are still around.
Yes.
And, you don't want to offend anyone.
No, and it could be very upsetting still,
That's right.
very raw for them to cope with.
And I do have another book that's a book of poetry and short stories.
Oh,
that's called Shades of Black. So that's poetry I wrote 20 years ago.
Okay.
But short stories that were inspired by the locations that I was investigating. So,
all right, that's good.
Kapunda, and they're fiction. They're not non-fiction.
Yes.
So one is a short story about an inmate in Arrowdale Asylum in Ararat.
Oh dear.
And I can't tell you what it's about on air because it's probably a bit lewd.
Okay. All right. That's okay.
He's in there for a reason.
Yes.
And that story is called The Plumpest Cows Make the Best Steak, which gives you nothing about what the story's about.
Okay.
But it's one you have to read.
Okay. Well, is it a bit... I find sometimes if I have to read something scary, is it scary that it might upset you whilst you're reading it, or...? It's
not scary in the jump horror kind of scare. It kind of builds up to what this gentleman does to other people in there.
Right.
I can't really think of a good way to put it.
No, you have just already said it all.
So it's to do with... he's basically making tallow.
Okay.
And if you know what tallow is made from, which is...
Yes, I think so, off the top of my head.
Body fats and things.
Yes,
so
understand.
he's doing things to other people, yes.
Oh, dear.
So
he's
it's
a naughty boy.
Yes, he's a very naughty boy.
Oh, dear.
And at the moment I'm working on a number of other books.
Yes.
So I'm probably closest one to being finished is Haunted Kapunda, which will be... I think there's roughly about 50 stories in that so far.
Okay, now that you can do a trail there. Did you used to do the trail around there?
Yes. Back in 2014, my wife and I got a ghost hunting team, ghost tour team, ghost crime tours to come out there.
Yes.
And we helped them set it up.
Yeah.
And then I ended up running the tours and Karen was backup, my wife.
Yes.
And we ran that for, I think, 2.5 years.
Yep.
Pretty much every Friday and Saturday night and got it established and, I
have to say that was pretty, going through it, you give a spine tingling in places.
Well, they do say...
And there were places I wouldn't go.
You wouldn't go, yeah.
No.
Well, they do say Kapunda is probably the most haunted town in Australia.
Oh, wow.
It does have that reputation. And the North Kapunda Hotel has the reputation as the most haunted hotel. So you're
the
in
two together.
The epicentre of it all. So.
And it was being refurbished too, wasn't it? At the back, were they going to do some...
They were going to do some things.
Then they stopped.
I'm not sure. I haven't actually been out there for a little while.
Okay.
I don't live out there anymore.
No.
I have been out to do some research, and I'm going back out to do some more soon, so I will find out.
Yeah, because...
I do have some things that were found behind a shelf in there, which will end up in the book.
Oh, okay.
And they're very interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, the reason why I got you to come on today was that just recently we went on a walking trail as such around Salisbury, and it was the haunted history of Salisbury, and it was a very interesting tour. It took us about an hour and a half, I think.
Sounds about right.
And, tell us how that came about.
So for the last, probably 3 or 4 years, I've been doing talks for the Salisbury Library Service, so doing them at Para Hills and things like that, talking about ghosts and history around the place.
Yes.
And I've written 2 other tours. So I wrote one for Port Adelaide Enfield Council, which is basically the same kind of thing around Port Adelaide.
Yes.
And then from the haunted buildings in Adelaide, I wrote one for the City of Adelaide called Adelaide Ghosts and Ghouls. That one is a downloadable tour. It's audio.
Okay.
And Salisbury Council decided that they wanted to have something different. And, I mean, there's other walking tours around, but there's not really anything like this.
No.
So they got in touch with me, and I using the Salisbury Library Services history section,
yes,
pulled out a whole heap of stories. I knew a few haunted places. The hardest thing with a tour, designing the tour, is to make it so that it's interesting.
Yes.
Having enough stories that are interesting. And generally with a tour like that, you want it to come back to where it started so people don't have to go too far to their cars. Correct.
Yes. Good thinking, 99. Yes.
So they got me in and we discussed how we were going to do it. So a lot of, like I said, a lot of research went in.
I can imagine.
Consulted with the local history officer here in the town, or in the city actually. I always call it a town, it's a city.
It is,
It is a city. So we went through, I went through a whole heap of books. I used Trove, which is, I don't know if you know about Trove, the National Library's database of old newspapers.
No, actually, I do. Only recently we went up there to look. My friend and I went up there to have a look in Adelaide for.
Oh, okay. So you don't even have to go to Adelaide anymore.
Oh.
You can get online. Oh. And you can go to Trove. So it's a National Library of Australia's website. If you type in Trove, it's a database with pretty much every newspaper in the state going back to the foundation of the state.
Oh my God!
And you can look by newspaper, by town, by year, by name, whatever you like.
Wow,
so
that's fantastic.
I spent hours and hours going through. Found a number of stories and matched them up to the ghost stories that I knew, which is what I do anyway. Yes. Try and get some legitimacy to why the place might be haunted. It's not just a random, I got a feeling. There is history behind why these places have these stories.
And it's probably even documented along the way.
Some of them are. The hardest one was, there's a story about a little boy called, his last name was Christorfen, Donald Christorfen. And that was on John Street. I think it's the second to last story. Yes. And that one was really, really hard to match up. So I knew that a child had died. I knew what his surname was, but I could not find out exactly where the building was.
Right.
I knew roughly where it was. It was near what they call the dog leg, which is where listeners might not know about that. John Street has a little dog leg at the end. Yes. Up to the dog leg was designed in the original plan, and then Joseph Broadstock designed that other little bit when the train station was built. Right, because there has been changes along that area. There has. And originally I think there were 4 or 5 cottages there. Yeah. And in the time between the foundation of the city and then now, that whole area is entirely different to how it looked back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so finding exactly where this building was really hard. But using Trove, I discovered that the Christorfen building had burnt down. Right. And the neighbours had come and put the fire out. Okay. And using the neighbours' names, I was able to work out exactly where the building was.
It is a bit like a detective work, isn't it?
And then that ended up adding a little bit more to it. Was in the 50s and 60s, that was where Salisbury's funeral home was.
Oh, yes, I remember you saying that now.
Yeah, so that adds a little bit more to, why it might be haunted. So,
It's also a good, aside from the paranormal that has happened, because the little boy, he does cry in some cases.
He does cry, yes. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, if I was working in that building and that happened to me, I think I'd have that would be really heart-wrenching, I think.
I think if it's not heart-wrenching, you'd get out of there pretty quick.
Yeah. So, it's pretty scary. But I guess that's the other thing I wanted to know. Like, you sort of touched on it but left it alone. Are there spirits or ghosts as such that can be nasty to people?
There are. They're very well documented cases of that.
Yeah.
Generally, poltergeist type activity can be nasty. It's not always nasty.
No.
But yeah, there can be negative things that will hurt people. I only know of one case where allegedly a spirit has killed someone, and that was in America. And that was to do with a heart attack. So it could have been something pre-existing in the person who died.
Yes.
And, the fear made their heart race so much that it killed them.
Yeah.
But it was attributed to the spirit.
Oh, dear.
You often hear of people getting scratches. Being that I'm more of a skeptic, I don't know if you know that sometimes you can scratch your arm.
Yeah.
And there's no rash or marks.
Correct, yeah.
And then a few minutes later, there's marks. So sometimes people will scratch themselves, and I always look to see if it's somewhere I can get my arm to.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if they can't get their arm to that spot,
yes,
that gives it more legitimacy that, they got scratched by something.
Right.
But if they can get their arm there, they may have scratched themselves and not even realise that they've done it.
No.
And then the welts don't come up for minutes afterwards. And then they go, oh, no, something's got me. But it hasn't. They just haven't realised.
They haven't realised they've scratched themselves. And
yeah.
Okay. You're more like scaring yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. Definitely are.
Gosh. I can, as we were going through cemeteries and graveyards, you were explaining the difference, I think, at one stage as well. But I remember back in my early youth, I bought a block of land which was off a side street next to the cemetery, and my mum really was unhappy in the fact that I bought this block of land, virtually 500 metres from the old cemetery. And my father just piped up. He said, "No," he said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "It's not the dead you have to worry about; it's the living." So that made her happy.
Yep.
But I guess there are still some people that have passed that haven't wanted to let go.
Yes. Haunted cemeteries aren't as common as what people think, but there is sometimes, for instance, West Terrace Cemetery in the city is considered haunted.
Oh, okay.
So where the old crematorium was, which was near the front of the second gate, has poltergeist activity. People report stones being thrown at them even to this day.
Oh my God.
That's an interesting one.
Right.
Obviously, St. John's Cemetery out at Kapunda, that's considered one of the most haunted. Closer to here is Yulee Road Cemetery at the back, the top of Craigmore. That's been known as a haunted place since probably the 50s.
Yes.
Lots of people go up there still to this day. There's a few noted spirits up there. One of them might be a gentleman named Daniel Garlick, who there's a big monument to him. He lived nearby, and the story goes that he appears in his horse and carriage.
Okay.
And he comes up his old road and vanishes as he goes through the cemetery. There's no reason why he would do it, but people have reported seeing that, and they think it's him. They might not be him, but they think it's him. So.
Well, maybe the reason why he hasn't let go is he still thinks he's home.
Well, his body's there.
Yeah.
He founded the church that used to stand in the middle of that cemetery.
Right.
And his property was right next to it. He pretty much founded Yuleeberry.
Well, yeah.
So, he could just be hanging around because that's where his
home.
name was. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's amazing, isn't it? Oh, dear. Now, the photo I put up on Facebook was you next to a bust of yourself.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So, a few years ago, I was at Z Ward at Glenside, and they had an open day, the old mental asylum there.
Yes.
And my wife and I were visiting, and we met two lovely people, Scott and Karina Eames, brother and sister.
Yeah.
And got talking to Scott and found out he's a sculpture artist.
Okay.
He's becoming quite famous at the moment, actually. So he's a sculpture artist, and one day he asked me if I would like to do a live sitting for him.
Okay.
So he was doing that at the City Library where I had just done my paranormal residency. So I said, yep, no worries, come down, and he did a live sitting with the clay.
Oh, wonderful.
And then we did a live sitting in Rundle Mall, which you'll find on YouTube. So Karen filmed it, and I sped it up.
Yeah.
So that was for the opening of the History Festival that year.
Okay.
So for 8 hours, I sat there while he sculpted me in
Oh,
Rundle
wow.
Yeah.
Sore bum.
And I stood there most of the time.
Oh, okay.
But the interesting thing was Scott let children come up and touch the clay.
Oh.
So on the statue, there's actually fingerprints from that day. He left them all on the statue.
Did he? That's actually a great idea.
Yeah, he said it's part of history. So if you look closely, you can actually see them.
Oh, excellent.
Then what was next? I think we did a sitting at his house, and we did 4 sittings all up.
Yes.
And then it debuted in the City Library. We had an opening for it. And then after it finished there, I think it showed in the Arts, I can't think what it's called, the South Australian Royal Society for Arts building on Institute on North Terrace.
I think so, yes.
And then Scott messaged me one day and said, I'd really like to give you the bust.
Oh,
and he gave me the bust. So now it sits in my office at home.
Oh, wonderful.
I've had it on display at the Gawler Library.
Yes.
And it's been on display somewhere else. I can't quite remember where else it's been.
Yeah.
So every History Month since it's been made, it's actually been on display.
Oh, that's nice.
So now, it sits in my office. It sits behind me. It doesn't sit in front of me because it's weird looking at yourself.
I think it'd be a bit funny.
Yeah, it is a bit strange. But it sits in my office. Yeah, Scott Eames is the artist.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent. I actually thought that I had seen it as I went down Rundle Mall. I'm wondering whether I might have been down there when that was happening. I'm not sure, but I in my mind I had that bust was actually still there in Rundle Mall.
We were in the Gawler Place Canopy when he did that live sitting.
Okay, yeah.
And then it was in the City Library for probably a good month, if not a little bit more than a month.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was, as you came in the front doors, it was literally right in front of you. It's the first thing you saw.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a really nice honour, isn't it, to have that done?
It is huge honour. And him giving it to me was a big surprise.
Yes, yes.
And people have said, what are you going to do with it? It's bronze. It will last for 500 years.
Yes.
So,
well, there you go.
So, family heirloom, I suppose.
Just put it in a bag when you're ready to take it somewhere you put it there. And
it is huge. Yeah. It is way bigger than me.
Oh.
It doesn't weigh very much, surprisingly.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, the plinth that it's on weighs more than the bust does.
Yes.
So when I had it on display in the Gawler Library last History Month, people could go up and take photos and they could touch it. And it's on the plinth, it's on like a rod that comes out of the plinth, and you can actually turn the statue around because it's hollow. Yeah. And the other side of it looks like a Dementor from Harry Potter movies.
Oh, really?
And that's just by accident, purely by accident.
Yeah.
But it actually does look like something from Harry Potter, which is interesting because one of my nicknames is Paranormal Hagrid.
Oh, really?
Yes.
There you go. I must one of these days. I've started watching the Harry Potter stuff, but I have never really got into it. I've now finally got all the books through getting them through op shops. Mm-hmm. So I have to actually start reading them. I might be leaving it a bit late in the long in the tooth or whatever to start, but anyway.
It is an interesting series.
It is an interesting series. And yes, we're back and we're talking to Alan Tiller about the paranormal and that's his passion and his livelihood as history. But firstly, we're just going to ask that, that is his passion. But how did you come about being involved in this passion? And foremost, how do you make a living from it? So
I got into this through genealogy. So back in my teens, I was right into looking up family history. I still am. And I found myself in cemeteries a lot. And at the time, I lived in Queensland. And I was at a cemetery looking people up. And I saw a ghost tour, so I went on the ghost tour. And they started talking about the people I'd been researching, but they were making up stories that weren't true about their life. And I'm standing there going, hang on a minute, that's not what happened.
No.
And then I found there's a whole world of people that go out hunting for ghosts. And that piqued my interest. I was already, TV fan, X-Files, all that kind of stuff. So I already had an interest, in the paranormal. Mm. I tried to join some teams up there, and most paranormal teams are very insular. They don't look for people outside their own little clique. Mm. Found it very hard. I moved back to South Australia and founded my own team in 2007 called Eidolon Paranormal.
Okay.
And my mission was to make the paranormal more accessible. So I started researching why things happen the way they do, psychology behind things, and putting them up on my website for people to read for free so they could also learn from it, because these were the things I wanted to learn. And
you couldn't get a hold of?
No, people wouldn't teach you these things.
No.
I always had a strong interest in history, and it just kind of happened. It's a strange thing. Things just happen in my life. I don't go looking for things. Things just land on me.
Okay.
So the TV show I did, Haunting Australia, that just happened to roll into my lap.
Oh,
I was
fantastic.
not looking to do TV at the time. And I had to be convinced to do the show because I wasn't really interested. So I did that. That opened up more doors, obviously.
Yeah.
At the time, I was a forklift driver, believe it or not, in warehousing.
Wow.
And I had a back injury and decided that I would get retrained. And so when I was at the city library, I thought I could do this job. So I went to TAFE and did a library studies course and got my diploma. And since then, I've been working in libraries as a library tech. So do
Wonderful.
most of the jobs that librarians do.
Yes.
That pays the bills.
Yep.
And in my spare time when I'm not studying at university, that's when I do the ghost hunting stuff.
Wow.
There's
So how much time do you get to sleep?
Not as much as I'd like. I'm generally up very early in the morning.
Yeah.
Because that's when I study best.
Yes. Yep.
And I go to bed around 10 p.m, but I'm up at like 7.
Yeah.
I don't know how many hours sleep that is. Probably not many.
Well, it's probably not
It's
a lot
probably
if you're
enough.
doing that every day. It's probably
Yes.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't like. There's not too many people who make money from the paranormal.
No.
Especially in Australia, it's a very small industry here. People
Yep.
that own tour companies might. In America is a bit different story because America has paranormal celebrities. So there's people like a gentleman called Zach Bagans who started a
Right.
show called Ghost Adventures.
Okay.
And that show's in, I'm not sure how many seasons now, probably 24, 25 seasons.
Oh,
he's had.
wow.
And he's an executive producer, so he gets a bigger paycheck than what just a cast member would.
No. That's
and
right.
he also owns the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, which has things like Dr. Kevorkian's death van
Oh.
and Charles Manson's TV from his cell and all these
Oh.
random horrible things.
Oh.
But it's won all these awards. It's considered haunted. And he's got enough money that he can invest in his passion, which
Yes.
is collecting these things
Wow.
and displaying them. And that's probably the peak of if you were going to go into television. Most ghost hunters aren't actually about that. They don't want to be famous.
No.
It's like anything though, really. I mean, some people do want to be famous. Other
Yes.
people just want to find out things for themselves. I'm one of those people that want to find things out.
Yes.
I'm not interested so much in fame.
No.
I have a
But,
job.
yeah.
I don't need
Yeah.
that. And fame's not everything it's cracked up to be. I can tell you that firsthand after
Yes.
being on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It can work against you as well as
it
for you.
can
Yeah.
very much work against you. And people often don't consider that when they enter the paranormal, that once you are out in the public as a ghost hunter,
Yes.
people will view you very differently because they think, oh, crazy ghost hunter, crazy
Oh.
psychic.
Okay.
And I'm not a psychic, and I don't label myself in that way. I'm more history centered than paranormal centered
Right.
these days.
Yeah.
I've been out investigated. I've done all of that. I've learned that most of the things that people think are hauntings are nothing to do with it. They're very easily explainable.
Yes.
So I'm probably more of a skeptic nowadays.
Okay. So you want more proof, don't you?
Yes, more proof. I've seen things I cannot explain, but that's not to say someone else can't explain it.
Okay.
Someone with more knowledge than me.
All right. So you might see something you're saying that, but if you'd want someone else with you to see it as well to tell you if that
Exactly.
is what you actually saw
Yes.
or not.
And an interesting thing from that perspective is my wife Karen and I were over in Ararat at the Arrowdale Mental Asylum.
Okay.
And we were there for a horror writers convention, and as part of it we had access to the entire 30-something buildings.
Yes.
And we were walking around and we noticed this little red light. And we thought, this is a bit strange. Maybe it's a laser light.
Right.
Couldn't see any laser beams. This light's just following us through all these hallways. So Karen got out her video camera and filmed it. And we tried everything we could to debunk it, and we still to this day do not know what it was. It wasn't an insect.
Okay.
It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't anything we were doing. It wasn't a laser pointer. And to this day, we still don't know what it is.
Can't work it out, can
No,
you?
and there were other witnesses to it as well. Not just us two, there were other people. So that's one of those things that to this day I have no explanation. Incredibly haunted
Scary.
location. Well worth checking out if you're ever over in Victoria.
Yeah, well, the only things I have checked out is I've been to the Adelaide jail, but not for the ghost tour. Been there.
Yep.
They used to have events there, like parties and stuff, and we were allowed to go into the cells. But I'd go in, but I couldn't stay in because the fear of the door shutting was enough not to go in. Went to the Melbourne Jail.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite different, eerie in a way.
Yep.
And we were shut in a cell there, and I didn't like that very much at all. And it's because it was also very dark. There was no windows in this cell, and you felt different things there. I don't know if you've been there yourself.
I haven't been to the Melbourne Jail. I've been to
the old
Geelong.
jail.
I've spent many hours in the old Adelaide Jail.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the Adelaide Jail Preservation Society.
Oh, okay.
So they run ghost tours and events in there still to this day.
Yes.
And I've been there at 3 a.m. and had all kinds of strange things happen that we could not explain.
Yeah.
Even on a tour. We were on a tour once, and Karen and I were at the back. We were just observing.
Yeah.
And we could hear something shuffling behind us. And every time we shone the torch back, there was no one there. We were the people at the back of the tour. And we got to what they call the new building and to the gallows. And the tour guide was telling her story. And from above us, which is a place you can't access,
right,
a woman's voice said some swear words.
Oh, really?
And everyone on the tour, 20-odd people, just went totally silent and were like looking around trying to see what it was.
There was no one there.
No one there at all.
See, that'd be really frightening for me. You know, it's not that I don't believe, because I'm sure it's there. Because I don't think I physically have seen a ghost as such. Mm-hmm. Closest I've come is in a brand new house that we had built, and it had a hallway that went past the kitchen and the extended not dining but lounge area, and then it went into another room at the back, which was another spare room that we had. And I was standing doing stuff in the kitchen, and I swear there was either a man or woman walked past in a white suit and then just disappeared.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, wow. And I thought, nah, it wasn't. Nah. But I'm sure I can still see it today.
Yep.
Happening to me, and that was out at Blakeview.
Oh, okay.
We had built out there.
And Blakeview's not really known as a haunted area or anything like that.
which makes me think it was actually something that came with us.
Yes, so that's what paranormal investigators call an attachment.
Yeah.
So, it might be a relative.
Yeah.
It might be an object that you own is something that person owned.
Yes.
And they've stayed with the object. Realistically, no one really knows how the paranormal works.
No, it's just really was really eerie. And I think I might have told my husband at the time about it, but I might not have said anything for quite some months because,
Yeah, have you got a reason in your brain? Did I see it or did I not see it?
No, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, and I get other times when the hair on my arms always go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that happens to me quite a bit.
Yep.
So, but I just put that down with, something I've been listening to or heard or watched on TV. That's what I do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what people call goosebumps.
Yeah.
The technical term for it is pileoerection, which is
right.
the goosebump in the hair.
Yeah.
And as you said, music can make that happen.
It can.
Memories can make that happen. It's
Correct.
not necessarily ghosts.
No, exactly.
It's been associated with the paranormal, but memories and the fight or flight mechanism in our brains can make it happen as well.
Okay.
Same as cold spots. When we get that chill that we're in a cold spot.
For sure,
You may be thinking, I'm in a haunted place and I'm getting scared, and then your brain goes, he's scared.
Yep.
Bang. You get that cold sensation and get the goosebumps, and instantly you think, it's a ghost, which makes things worse. And but it may not be that at all.
No, it might. Yeah, so I'm quite apt with you telling me that it's nothing to do with ghosts because I'm sure it's not. There's other triggers involved.
There is, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. The Salisbury Institute next door has a ghost as well, doesn't it? Mm.
So they think the ghost is John Harvey Jr.
Okay.
Which I think is the second son of John Harvey, the original founder of the city of Salisbury.
Yeah.
So he was a foundation member of the Institute.
Yes.
So he's a good part of the reason why it was built. So they think that he is the spirit, and this gentleman walks through the main hall inspecting it. But he's not the only ghost. The other ghost doesn't. Yeah. No one knows who it is, and that ghost is in the basement.
Oh.
So a lot of the people that work in that section will not go in that basement by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But no one knows exactly who that is or what that is down there. But it's not very nice, whatever it is.
So has it ever hurt anyone? Or?
It's not so much it hurts people. People get paranoid and fearful. So whatever it is, I mean, it could be in their minds. It could be because, someone's told them there's a ghost, so they get scared.
Yeah, well, I won't go down there now.
I have had one report of someone being touched by something they couldn't see down there, and obviously that's going to make you very scared.
Yeah, that would. Yes.
And so I don't know if that is the same ghost that's up the top.
Okay.
It could be. But why he would be doing something entirely different in the basement to the hall itself is a bit odd.
Yeah, it is a bit odd. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, what are your plans for the future? I know you're busy, very, very busy.
Yes, very busy. So, obviously, COVID has made things very hard for everyone.
Yes.
Earlier this year, my wife and I had teamed up with a group called Athletica who do fitness holidays, which probably seems like an odd thing for someone like me to do. But we had planned to go to the USA. And we were going to do a Ghost Adventures tour. And we were going to go to San Francisco. And we were going to go to the Winchester Mystery House. We were sleeping overnight on an old haunted aircraft carrier.
Oh, good.
And then we were going to wind our way through old cowboy towns and end up in Vegas for the museum I spoke about earlier.
Yes.
Obviously, COVID stopped that. So we couldn't do it. So we tried to think of something else that we could do with Athletica. And the gentleman who runs it, Rob Code, is right into the paranormal.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so he's got a very strong interest. He's had some experiences. And we decided that we might go to Tasmania.
Oh,
so
okay.
in January next year,
yes,
we are going to take members of the public with us.
Right.
If they get on the Athletica's website, they can see how to book.
Yes.
We are there for, I believe, 5 nights. Don't quote me on that.
Right, okay. I'll have to go. I'm going to write that down.
I've got to record it. Athletica is the website. And you'll see on the top it says Tasmania Paranormal Adventure.
Right.
So Karen and I are leading tours, investigations. We're going just to haunted places to walk through them.
Okay.
And so we're investigating Willow Court Asylum. And as you probably are aware, Tasmania is Hobart's the second oldest city in the country.
Yes, so it's bound to have a few.
Hundreds of people were hung in the jails there.
Yeah.
So we're going to some of the most haunted jails. We're going to Richmond Jail, which is the oldest jail in Tasmania.
Right.
And we're going to visit the Richmond Bridge, which has a really fascinating ghost story of a guy named George Grover. And he was a flagellator. Oh. So he whipped all the other convicts. He was a convict himself.
Yeah, but
his
that
job
was his job.
To whip them.
Oh.
And eventually they had enough of his whippings and they threw him over the bridge and killed him. And he's been seen on that bridge ever since. So we are visiting that bridge.
Yeah.
We're also spending 2 full days in Port Arthur.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And Port Arthur's very, very haunted. We're visiting the Isle of the Dead as well, which is a cemetery on an island with all the convicts buried there, haunted as well.
You better check everybody's heart before you get there.
So it should be an interesting trip. So that's on Athletica, and you can just jump online and either on my Facebook page or on Athletica's page and see it and get all the details. There's a full itinerary you can download and see where we're going.
That's right. And you've got your website?
I don't have a website currently.
No.
But I do have the Haunts of Adelaide blog, which comes out every Tuesday night.
All right.
And that's up to, I think, in about 3 weeks, it'll be 9 years I've been writing that for.
Oh, wow.
So there's hundreds of stories. It's not just ghosts. There's crime. There's history.
Yes.
Anything I'm interested in at the time that I'm not, that's interesting.
And you'll write about it.
Yeah, and I'll write about it.
Yeah.
And you'll find some stories that are in my books are also on there, but they're a shorter version because you can only fit so much on a blog.
True.
So I know for a fact that the Adelaide Arcade is actually one of the first places I wrote about, and that spans over about 6 weeks on there.
Yes.
But in my Haunts of Adelaide book, it's probably a third of the book. There's so many stories from that place.
Wow. Yeah.
You get more value in the book than you do the website.
Yeah. I wonder if people, like during the day, if they walk like down that Adelaide Arcade, whether they would feel something and not know what happened.
Well, it's possible. One of the stories in the book was from the Haunted Adelaide residency that I did. And one of the ladies said that back in the 60s, before the 60s, they didn't have the second internal story.
Yep.
So it was just a single story. And when they were building it, you weren't allowed to go up there. She worked there.
Okay.
And she was there before any of the workers and anyone like that. And she was going to where she works, and she looked up, and there was a man wearing a blue uniform looking at her. And as she looked at him, he disappeared. So that's in the book. And there's other stories about workers up in the top. Poltergeist type activity happened to them. And things happen day or night there. It doesn't make any difference.
Wow.
I become good friends with the owners of the Manhattan Dry Cleaners.
Yes.
The Berry family. They've been there since 1976.
Okay.
And if you happen to be walking through the arcade, pop your head in and say hello and ask them about Francis Clooney, and they'll tell you some of their stories, because things happen there all the time.
Oh, my God.
Day and night.
So it's a constant...
It is, very much. Yeah.
Okay.
It's never ended since he died in 1887. He's seen constantly, heard constantly.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll ask you a quick question. If you happen to have a ghost in your house... not that I have one now, but, like if you happen to have a ghost, is there any chance to help them to move on?
There is chances to help them move on. Obviously, you want to get a good psychic who can communicate with them.
Yeah.
Some ghost hunters can help as well. I generally say to people, if you think your house is haunted, keep a diary of what's going on.
Okay.
So get a diary, write in the time, the day, who was there, what happened. And then if you get a ghost hunter in, they can use that diary to find out, what times things are happening, who it's happening to, and then use that to try and debunk it first. And not everyone likes their ghost being debunked. They want to believe it's a ghost.
Oh, okay.
Other people are happy for it to be debunked.
Yes.
There's a lovely lady named Jane Blackett from a team called Whisper here in Adelaide, and she does a lot of fantastic work helping people through their hauntings.
Okay.
You'll find a lot of ghost hunters and psychics will come in, they'll do what they do, and then they leave you to it.
Right.
Whereas Jane will stay on, and she'll keep checking in every couple of months to make sure you're fine, make sure nothing's happening.
Yeah.
So she's I know for a fact one case has been going for 4 years, and that's her checking in, making sure they're still fine.
Sure. Yeah.
So she's worth checking out one day if you have the time.
Yeah. No, that'd be interesting. And I just suddenly thought of another question. You might have a new house, like I was describing before. Can you have a ghost happening in a new house that has been on old land?
Yes.
Old situation, maybe.
Yes. So I often get reports of hauntings in brand new houses on brand new estates.
Yeah.
And people always think first, well, there's been no one here.
Yeah.
But they forget about Indigenous people, for starters.
That's right.
So it could be an Indigenous spirit.
Yes.
It could be a spirit of the land, which people don't consider. But they also forget that relatives may come to visit. So dead relatives might come to visit. There might be something attached to something. So say an old piano.
Yes.
You buy a piano, you don't know its history.
No,
there might be someone attached to that piano, and they come in and play it. So it is possible. Brand new houses can be haunted.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. Look, this has just been amazing. I mean, look, we've been chatting for quite some time now, and I don't think we've touched the surface.
No.
So they should go out and check your Facebook page and follow up. What other areas?
The only other thing that I have to mention,
okay,
I promised that I would, is obviously we were talking about the tour, the Salisbury tour, which is the Haunting History of Salisbury tour.
That's right.
If people are interested in doing it, it's free, and it will always remain free. So they can go to the Salisbury Community Hub, which is on John Street, and they can pick up a book. There's a book there for free. Or if they choose to, on their phone, if they go to discoversalisbury.com.au/app, they can actually download the tour, and I will guide them around the city of Salisbury via the audio.
Yeah, it's excellent. I've got it myself. I've put it on my phone. So, no, everybody should do that. I nearly forgot about that. And, of course, Halloween is coming up.
Yes.
I don't particularly agree with the fact that we follow the Americans with the Halloween thing.
So here's a whole controversial thing for you.
It is.
Halloween's not American.
Okay.
It's European. It's from
there
Ireland.
You go. Blame it on the Italians. There we go.
No, Ireland, the Irish.
Irish, okay.
Yes, Irish.
Yeah.
So the Irish took it over to New York.
Yes.
And then the Americans hooked into it, and then it became very famous through things like Disney.
Of course.
And that's where it became what it is there today. But originally it is Celtic Gaelic.
Okay. Well, see, we can't blame them after all, can
No.
we? All right. So thank you very much for coming, Alan.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been very, very thoughtful.